because they're all just a reflection of the people that run them, the artists. And because when you walk into one, so many different people.
Hi, how are you? Welcome. Nice to you ventured out in the freezing summer temperatures. So you're brave. I'll tell you a little bit about our show, and then feel free to have a look around and ask us questions. Basically, we split this show into two main artists, and then throughout the gallery there's a couple other people hanging as well. But what I'll do is I'll focus on the two people that we send cards out for the opening. In the front here is work by Mary Boardman, and Mary is a St. Louis artist. She works in charcoal on mylar, and these are very large mylar sheets. This is the kind of mylar that like an architectural firm would use for architectural drafting purposes. It's semi-opaque frosted mylar, so she's working on the frosted side. And actually, if you want to come up close, a lot of her work is all about the materials and the surface. So she's working on this plastic sheet with charcoal, and she's very aggressive with the application. Most of what you're seeing is only the charcoal put on the mylar sheet and then erased back to the surface. So because it's a plastic, that charcoal works a lot like paint for her. She gets a lot of movement. She's able to totally erase back to the surface, and all of the white that you're seeing is just the light passing through the mylar sheet and then bouncing back. So in addition to her having this great movement of the charcoal on the mylar, she also gives this kind of luminous effect, and the charcoal is softened therefore, because it's not as contrasty as, say, charcoal on paper or something like that. In some of the pieces, she'll highlight with Conté crayon, and if you look up at the one in the front there, you'll notice around his body there's almost like a smoky haze, and that's the Conté that's mixed in. But most of the work is just the charcoal, some graphite and other materials, and then the mylar surface of the work. It's a very unique process, and something that she saw when she was in art school. She saw some work by Jim Dine called the Liptech series, which were paint and other materials and ink and charcoal on mylar, but she especially liked the way that the mylar was kind of reacting with that paper, and so she started to experiment. Her whole career has been of this kind of material, and also work in this scale. As an interesting kind of part of her personal history, her first career was a sign language interpreter. And so she was doing that and interpreting for the deaf until her mid-30s. And then she developed fibromyalgia, which is a neurological pain disease that people get. And I think it's kind of, there's not really an explanation for it, people just develop it. She was actually bedridden for about a year of her life or so, during which time she says she couldn't even wash her hair. Like, just the act of that kind of movement was too painful, and she had headaches and stuff like that. She went through some personal physical therapy and specialists who altered her diet and changed the way that she lives. So she's very strict about when she sleeps, and no caffeine and no drinking, and she's kind of has a very structured life now, and she's able to cope. And after she kind of recovered from that, she went back to art school in her mid-30s, and this is what grew out of that kind of experience. So it's kind of an amazing transformation of her personal career. And I think you see that connection that she used to have with people in sign language in the way that she connects with these people. It's almost like a different form of interpretation for her. She's conveying their emotions to everybody through her work. The subjects of her pieces are kind of everyman. They're just someone that she can see in the park. She might see them in a coffee house. The tall portrait of the male over here was her first model, and she saw him jogging through the park in St. Louis, and she actually chased him. through the park. She loved the way the sun hit his dreadlocks, and it was just that he had this very kind of strong presence, and she was drawn to that. And she approached him, and he probably thought she was a freak, and eventually she coerced him to come back to her studio and photographed him. He then became the subject of a number of different portraits for her, and now they're very close friends. Some of the other people that she'll choose are someone she'll approach in a coffee house, or someone that she'll just see on the street. Maybe they're a bag boy in the grocery store, but she really looks for diverse and unusual faces, faces that maybe you don't typically see in Western art. So she's choosing very purposefully a lot of African American, Asian American, Hispanic American people. Not always, but often you'll see that kind of diversity of people in the work. And they have that impact of like a Chuck Close because of the scale. But I think she's great at tapping into something that's really universal in the emotions of the people. And after you see them, they almost become iconic. It's just this immediate connection with certain pieces for certain people.
Does she only do men? Or does
No, she does. There's a great portrait of a woman around the corner. She does do a lot of men, and I would say that's probably 80% of her work. And that could also be because you don't often see the male figure put into such a prominent place in Western art either, as much as you don't see African American or Asian American people. She's also choosing men as the subject matter, and it's also just, she's just drawn to that, and she's very good at it. And it's just part of her work. So it's just a really interesting combination of a lot of different things that make her work so powerful, and we've represented her for most of her career, and people now are really recognizing her work. She was just purchased at a museum in West Virginia last month, her second museum collection other than the school that she teaches at. So, but feel free to have a look at the surface, because even though they're photo realist kind of from afar, as you get close to the work, you really kind of relate to that surface, and it's all about the technique and the being able to see them up close. Almost all of them are framed behind non-reflective Denklat, which is a very large expense in her work, but because it's so important to get up close to them, that's something that we've chosen to do and deal with in her work. There's a number of other people throughout the gallery, furniture and sculpture, which I'm not going to talk about, but I'll just take you to the back and tell you about one. Here we go. There's cards for the show if you want to take